The Pup Fresh Podcast, Pup Fresh Podcast, Pup Fresh Podcast. Welcome to the Pup Fresh Podcast, episode number 12. Holy mackerel. I'm at 12 episodes of this thing. My name's Dan. I am the host here at the Pup Fresh Podcast. I have no guest this week, so if you are venturing into this podcast hoping that I'm interviewing one of your favorite bands, I am not doing that. So if you decide to continue listening after this point, I thank you in advance for having to endure me. And if you enjoy it and, enjoy hearing me talk, then I want to thank you for, the support, because you don't have to be listening to me. You could be doing anything else. You could be watching Veep on HBO Go, which I've been doing. And no, I'm not being paid to say that. I started watching Veep. It's a pretty good show. I thought I'd just kind of jump into conversation about Warped Tour for this episode, if that's okay with y'all. I went to Warped Tour on the 24th, which was last Friday, and I had a pretty good time. It was like my first year going since like probably my first year that I wasn't doing press or photos or doing working, because I always go there. I've had a website. I've been doing interviews. I used to do photography. So I always went to Warped Tour busy, stressed out, just trying to enjoy myself yet still work. And it's tough to do that. So I went this year just as a spectator. I went with my girlfriend and we kind of just walked around and saw a bunch of bands, a lot of them which I probably wouldn't have seen if it wasn't for Warped Tour, so that was cool. Probably my favorite band of the day, all-around performance, was As It Is, and I'm not just saying that because Patty was nice enough to be a guest on this podcast a couple of weeks ago, or maybe a month ago or so, but because they legitimately put on a great show. They had a lot of energy, and I didn't see any band that brought it as hard as they did, and it was pretty late in the day too, so they had the huge excuse of being exhausted to not go out there and put on a crazy good live show, but they still came out and they delivered. I actually got to meet Patty for the first time, and he was very, very nice to me, and I felt really bad for him because he had to deal with me trying to have a social interaction with somebody, which is something that I'm not very good at, I'll admit. And I'm really bad at networking. I'm bad at just talking to people for the first time. I'm almost better if I have a reason to talk to somebody. Like if I have I could talk to you if I have a job to do, and I'm really good at that. But when it comes to just meeting somebody and just not for me. I'm not as social, I think, as I'd like to be. But he was really, really, I guess, patient with me. I don't know. We talked for 15 minutes. He was a good guy. Nice to meet him. Everything like that. And I'm still I don't know. Oh man, 3 minutes in, I'm already on the self-deprecation. But yeah, I'm not good at talking to people. So. But I saw a lot of other good bands too. I had a good time checking out Moose Blood. They were really, really, really good. They're a really solid band. I had a all access VIP wristband that I got, and I got to watch Moose Blood from on the stage, and I was sandwiched between Mariel from Candy Hearts and Dan from the Wonder Years. And it was, I don't know, I felt very, very pop punk in that moment. You would think that I'm way more into pop punk than I really am, but I'm really not. But Moose Blood was out of this world good. When I went to go try to buy a CD from them, they were sold out of them. So I think that says something about how well they're doing this year on Warped. I also enjoyed watching Lee Corey Oswald, and that's a band that I don't think a lot of listeners to this podcast would enjoy, just because they're not really I don't think they belong in the Warped Tour scene, but they were great. I bought a shirt and a CD from them. The only music purchase I made of the day. I really dug what they were doing. They also have a really strong positive message, a lot of literature at their merch table in regards to domestic violence and just treating humans right, which it's rare that you see that in a band. You see a lot Buddy from Census Fail's been really big on the Twitter lately, just kind of getting around at these social issues and addressing them. And I have so much respect for bands that decide to go out there and say something and actually, have the balls and the courage to go out there and, go against the norm, which is just ignore and move on. They're going out there and they're speaking their mind, and that's great. I also got to watch Simple Plan, which that was my girlfriend went nuts because I guess it's been her goal since 5th grade to see Simple Plan, which I didn't think it would be. If you've been trying since 5th grade to see Simple Plan and you haven't seen Simple Plan by now, you're not trying hard enough. But she finally got to see him and she had a great time. They were good. Also watched a little bit of Never Shout Never Set, and I can't believe how much that band has progressed, and they are such talented musicians. It's nuts to me. I watched Paris. They were cool. I remember seeing them playing in front of like 100 people in a dive bar in Lansing less than a year ago. So, and they had probably the biggest crowd that I saw all day next to Pierce the Veil, but Paris was unbelievable. I watched Bless the Fall Song. I watched a ton of people. I watched a lot of bands perform, and it was a pretty good time. I'm happy. I was able to leave Warped Tour with minimum sunburn. The only place on my body that got sunburn was the back of my knees, which is, I guess, your knee pit. You got your armpit. Well, maybe it would be your leg pit. Yeah, it was my leg pit. I got sunburn there because I didn't use sunblock on there, but I didn't get any sunburn. I didn't get dehydrated. It was all around good time. And another performance that kind of, I think, stole the show for me, aside from As It Is, was I saw American Opera perform, and I'm old friends with John, and he from American Opera. He's great. He was on the podcast not too long ago, and not too many of you listen to it because I realize that you don't necessarily know who he is. But that's a band that I would encourage you all to listen to. He's really good, really passionate, and I have so much respect for him. And BB Rexa, I saw her. She was unbelievable. I couldn't believe that I got to see BB Rexa play at Warped Tour. I think that she's going to blow up and she's going to pull a Katy Perry on us and just, get some sharks to dance with her or something. She was nuts. It was cool. I loved the fact that she goes up on stage and just doesn't care and talks about the industry and kind of, talks shit and does her thing. Like, she was, I loved it. Yeah, I had a good time. I really did have a good time. One thing, I did not get to take advantage of my wristband that I had as much. So being on the stage and watching it side stage isn't as cool as you would like anticipate it being. You mostly are just staring at the back of an amplifier or at a drummer and not really hearing the sound all that well. But I still wanted to like be up there because I feel like it's good for your image if you're like up on the stage and people are like, oh, that's the dude from Pup Fresh. He must be in with, people, so he's on the stage. That makes sense for those people who would actually recognize me. But realistically speaking, it's just, I probably look like I don't fit in. I'm a loser for like having that mindset. But like, being on stage, it's not that cool. But when I was on stage, I was right next to Trace Cyrus of Metro Station, who, as you all know, I've just been talking so much shit about on Twitter for the past like week after his blow up at the APMAs and stuff like that. And I didn't actually say anything to his face. And Kyle Lucas, who is like, I think he's a rapper or a producer. He does like features on songs. He's a songwriter, was on Twitter and he saw me tweet a picture of the fact that I was next to Trace Cyrus. And he's like, oh, bet you didn't say anything to him. You're right next to him. And he was kind of patronizing me on Twitter. Kyle Lucas was, about the fact that I didn't say anything to Trace Cyrus. And I wanted to talk about that because I think that that's such like an interesting notion. I was, obviously being accused of hiding behind my keyboard and things of that nature, which is completely like true. And I'm going to own that. And I'm going to admit the fact that I had an opportunity to say something to Trace Cyrus's face after talking shit about him online. And I didn't. And reasoning why. Number one, I was, not the time or the place to do that. I don't think. Somebody would argue, why is it the time and the place when you're online? Because it was convenient, topical, and happening at the APMAs, and I was providing commentary on what I was witnessing, which was him being a total asshole. I'm not going to, on stage at Warped Tour while I'm watching Paris play, turn to him and be like, hey, man, you're immature and lame, and you hide behind the fact that you have a lot of money, and, that's just not a conversation that I'm going to have with the guy, because he is an individual who makes videos of himself saying, I want to fight anybody that talks shit about me. So, for one, I don't want to get into like a physical, like violent fight with another human being. That's not something that I want to do. I'm not the most physically capable of doing that. I also don't think that fighting, even if I was like jacked and could take anybody, I don't think that fighting would be anything that I would ever want to do because it doesn't necessarily solve anything. So part of the reason I didn't want to say anything to him was because it would more than likely just result in me getting punched in the face, which some may argue that I deserve. And that's okay. You're entitled to feel that way. But, if I was able to sit down and have a conversation with the guy, I would be so down to do that. But I don't think that I'm going to, within 15 seconds of being next to the guy, be able to like change his perception or get any message across to him. That's just not realistic. I'm trying to be realistic here. That's what I'm getting at. The whole argument with hiding behind a keyboard as well, that's, again, something that I'm going to own. Like, yeah, am I doing that a little bit? Absolutely. At the same time, I'm running a Twitter account, making jokes. Half the stuff I'm saying is like lighthearted, but it's also one of those things where being on that keyboard, having 25,000 people being able to see what I have to say on Twitter whenever I want to say it, that's my platform. That is where I'm going to make the most change. Talking to him directly when all that he's looking to do is fight anybody who has anything negative to say about him, that's not going to change anything. Going out there and saying, hey, making jokes and implying at least that this person is not an ideal role model, not an ideal person in the scene that people should be looking up to, supporting, and if you're a fan of the music, whatever, that's subjective. But to say that he is a good person, that's not true. In my eyes, I don't think that that's true. So I use my website as a platform to get that message across. I mean, he's an individual who's saying that a band is disrespectful when he's going up on stage at an award show wearing no shirt. He's posting pictures of his girlfriend, saying that he's so happy and doesn't care about what the haters have to say because of how hot she is. So he's an individual who objectifies women. Listen to the songs that he writes and the lyrics that he writes and tell me that this is a human being who has respect for the opposite sex. Again, these are things that I'm getting across in my tweets, while most of them are arguably obnoxious and witty or whatever. I think they're funny, but a lot of people think that they're obnoxious. This is my platform to say, hey, this is how I feel, and for the most part, everybody agrees with me. But dudes like Kyle Lucas come out here and say, hey, you're hiding behind your keyboard. Well, absolutely, man, it's my platform. Like, of course, I'm going to go out there and say something there where people will actually hear me and listen to me, and not just want to hurt me. So, that was why I didn't say anything to Trace Cyrus. I will say this about him, though. I did witness him. I saw like his merch guy or TM or something run up to him, just whisper something in his ear, and he was like kind of backstage area. He ran to his merch table, took a picture with the fan. I thought that was really nice. So here I'm going to say something nice about Trace Cyrus. I think that for the people that support him, he's very, very kind to his fans. So, head off to the guy for doing that, because he did go out of his way after the band already had like a signing for a very long time, and he took the time to take a picture with a fan or sign an autograph or something. So I witnessed that happen, and that was pretty cool of him. But in terms of like him, I mean, I think I saw Lee Corey Oswald tweet something like bragging about Ronnie Radke being on one of your songs and nothing to be proud of. It's true, but I mean, you talk about people that don't respect women. There you go. So that was a thing, and I guess it didn't help that I took pictures. Okay, so I did take a picture of me giving the Metro Station merch table and their set the middle finger, and a video of myself doing that. That was just that. Okay, maybe people don't get my sense of humor, but do you not get that that's not necessarily me saying, oh, fuck these guys? It's more so like a joke of the people who say fuck these guys. Like, I'm being ironic here. I don't know. I'm gonna try to justify it all I want. Okay, maybe I'm a keyboard warrior, maybe all that, but I'm not the type of person that wants to fight people. And I think that I have a pretty darn good perspective when it comes to how an artist should present themselves, which actually brings me to a Twitter question that I received regarding this podcast. So somebody asked if bands should be accountable for the message in their music and the lyrics that they write and everything like that. And I think that it's inherently so that they are accountable for the message from their music. I think that that's a given. So you look at a band like Metro Station or Falling Reverse, and I'm not going to pull up lyrics. That there's misogynistic lyrics and things like that. But then you also look at like bands like Mayday Parade, where there's misogynistic lyrics. You look at bands like Bayside. You look at, bands like You Mean Everyone We Know, where there's those lyrics in their older songs. I think that when you write a song as a young person, and that's kind of what your perception is, and you're not educated on these issues and things like that, yeah, at that time you're held accountable and responsible for them. But time does pass. Things do change. You could decide not to perform those songs at your set anymore. You could come out with statements saying that you regret some of those lyrics. You could write songs that counter those points and say that you are now more informed. But I don't think that kind of goes along with you throughout the rest of your career. So when Metro Station comes out with a song in 2014 that is about like objectifying women and things like that, like, yeah, like that's obviously their stance. And that's like new content. But you look at a band like Mayday Parade, who 10 years ago or however long it's been, called a girl a whore. Like that was them 10 years ago. Like, let's see where they're at now. Like a lot of time has passed. I think that everybody's kind of guilty of, when they're younger, not necessarily having a good outlook and being sensitive to those kind of things. So yeah, it kind of is more like there has to be like a statute of limitation there, to where you like enough time passes and it becomes okay, I guess. Or maybe it's just acknowledging that you regret it or are informed about it. I think Anthony Ranieri of Bayside actually came out and said something about how some of his old lyrics he kind of regrets, and but time does go on. I mean, even look at Hayley Williams, like Misery Business, that whole song, and she's spoken about that too. So yeah, they're accountable for that. Their image, their music. I mean, you look at a band like Attila, even, like, okay, like you tell me that band has learned anything, like they still go up there and are like proud of the fact that they don't have respect. So that is my take on that. And if you want to let me know what you think about that, tweet at Pup Fresh. I'd like to know everybody else's perspective on if bands should be held accountable. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is the band Slaves, who got kicked off of Warped Tour. And then they came out with a statement a couple of days ago where they said that it was the best thing to ever happen to their band, kind of talked about how much money they were making, and it was just absolutely a ridiculous statement. So, of course, with a ridiculous statement of saying that being kicked off of Warped Tour for sexually harassing your merch girl is the best thing to ever happen to your band, obviously that's a stupid statement. I figured that I would respond to it with a stupid news post, which I said, Slaves say getting kicked off Warped was the best thing to ever happen to them, prove that they are still dipshits, which Slaves then responded to us and said, keep talking about us, smiley face. But I'm sorry. That is an idiotic statement to come out with. And if you're saying that it's good for you to be kicked off of Warped Tour because of this, like, that's ridiculous. Getting voted off Warped Tour, and this is a quote, getting voted off Warped Tour is the best thing to ever happen to our band. It was more of a reminder than a punishment. We don't give a fuck about our first week sales. We don't give a fuck about what bands in our scene think of us, and we don't give a fuck about how many followers we have on the internet unless those followers love music as much as we love music. So it's essentially just saying, hey, we don't care. Like, they did not hold themselves accountable for what they did. They mostly just said, we don't give a shit, which is the worst possible thing that you can do. Idiotic, which is why I said that. And so this is a band, they were voted off by the artists on the tour, which I think Kevin Lyman maybe should have came out and just kicked them off when he found out that Johnny harassed their merch girl, because I think by giving the responsibility to the artists on the tour, you're kind of taking the responsibility out of your hands and just kind of pushing it off onto you. Like, hey, I don't necessarily have the balls to do this. Here, you guys vote on it. I'm not saying that that's what happened, but that's could easily be what somebody perceives it as, in terms of what Kevin Lyman did by leaving up to the artist vote. But they were voted off of Warped Tour, so I don't understand why I'm getting all of this hate on my Twitter from people that are like, oh, what did Slaves do? They didn't do anything. They don't deserve this. Way to just blow this out of proportion, blah, blah, blah. Like, no, dude, he sexually harassed his merch girl like that, and he got kicked off of a tour for it. That's, something to talk about. Like, I'm not going to bite my tongue at that. Like, what do you, like, what is this? Like, I have too many opinions to bite my tongue. Sorry, I'm not, that's not what I'm here for. So, Johnny Craig has been given so many chances in this music scene, and a lot of those were pertaining to his addiction, which I'm not opposing right now. I think that addiction's an awful thing, and it should be treated. Addiction should have better treatment programs for people that fall into it, and it's unfortunate that society doesn't necessarily give enough attention to addicts, and they just kind of write them off as druggy losers, whatever. with that said, Johnny Craig has made a lot of mistakes in the past, mistreated people. It's always something with him. And you would think that with this new outlook and everything that he's overcame, that he would be a little bit more conscious about his actions and the way that he treats other people. And clearly he hasn't learned anything, which is so unfortunate. But at the same time, I can't feel bad for the guy at this point in his career after all that he's done. He's very problematic. And that's just a fact. And so when people ask me what's my opinion on slaves, it's that Johnny Craig is kind of just a toxic human being who kind of brings down whatever he's involved with. And he's been doing that for years and years and years. And so other fans that are going to be mad at me about this and unfollow us and talk all this like crap about us because, we're standing up and saying, hey, harassment isn't good. Johnny Craig does not, isn't a good person. It's just like the Trace Cyrus thing. It's like these people have this platform to spread positivity and everything, or even if you don't want to spread positivity, at least don't make things worse for everybody else. And that's what they did. They harassed their merch person, broke contracts, did whatever they did, and don't have any remorse for it at all. And their statement clearly stated that. So when they said, keep talking about us, I don't know. I said, keep having no remorse for discussing actions, keep standing by a toxic lead singer who harasses women, and keep being a bunch of insensitive white dudes who call themselves slaves, which that honestly is so infuriating to me because I'm a white man. I'm a white man who's grown up a very privileged life. And I would never stoop as low as to call my band slaves, knowing what slavery was in history and anybody with the slightest bit of education knows that it's nothing to compare yourself to or brand yourself as. Why are you branding yourself as a slave? A slave to what? You know absolutely nothing about slavery. What adversity have these members of these bands had to face? Addiction, sure. The loss of loved ones, sure. Is that anything taken away from the right that every human being should have to just exist without being hated or being discriminated against for what they are? And it's really, really disgusting to me that a band would call themselves that. It's crazy that nobody really ever talks about it, but that's definitely that's a conversation to have right there. I mean, is that an appropriate name for this band? I don't think so. Like whether you've been through shit or not is a white dude, you don't necessarily know shit about what it is to be a slave, no matter what you've been through. I mean, to even be a black person, you have no idea what that's like day to day, in terms of how society views you and how society treats you. And I try the best to my ability to be sensitive to racial issues, which is why I have a problem with this, but I can never in a million years understand what it is like to be in somebody else's skin or to be a different color and to be looked at as anything other than just a straight white male. And I realize my privilege, and so for a band to go out there, a bunch of idiots, a bunch of, people that disrespect their surroundings and everybody, and to have the audacity to call themselves slaves, that is your name, that's your brand, that is absolutely disgusting to me. And anything else with that's just wrong. That is just wrong. And maybe a lot of people will say that I'm blowing it out of proportion and everything like that, but I don't think that I am. And I think that I have a good point. And if you disagree with me, then I don't know, you might be a racist. But anyway, so a lot of the hate that I was also getting was in relation to the way that we present ourselves on social media and everything like that, and people say that we are biased and everything, and this is an issue that I address often, and I guess I'll just regurgitate it for you once more. It's the fact that yes, a lot of journalists take an unbiased stance towards the stories that they report, and that's fine, but that's not us. I have an opinion. I have a message. I have a platform where I'm able to express that opinion, and I'm not just going to ignore that like so many others do. So many people in bands do. So many people just in general do. Do I hit on every single social issue that there is? No. But when it's right in front of my face, I don't ignore it. I could be doing more. Everybody could be doing more, but I'm doing what I can. And so when these things happen, when these things come up, when somebody's harassing somebody, when somebody's beating somebody, when somebody's saying inappropriate things, I will go out there and I'll say something about it, because I'm not just a reporter. In fact, I don't even consider myself a journalist. If you call me a journalist, then I'm absolutely flattered, but I don't think that I'm that. I'm a music fan. I have a blog. People pay attention to it. I promote when news hits and everything like that, but I don't think that I'm much of a journalist. And so for people to tell me how to run my website and how to word my tweets and how to do this and this and this, when all I'm doing is expressing my views on things from a perspective that I don't think is wrong, it really bothers me. And the fact that, along with the fact that when somebody does things that is on the borderline of being a sex offender, when people are, I'm not going to name names of bands and everything like that, but when I'm denied opportunities to work with certain artists because their publicist works with a band that I expose for being a potential sex predator and things like that, it bothers me, because, no, we don't fit this mold of every reporter, of every news site and everything like that. But at the same time, what are we doing wrong by spreading the word about people that you should avoid and fear, and people that are doing so much wrong in our scene and not making our scene a safe place? Why am I wrong in that? Why do I get the cold shoulder from artists? And this happened at Warped Tour. I'm not going to say any names or anything like that, but why do I get the cold shoulder from certain people that I used to be close with because somebody that they know or somebody that they work with was exposed by me for being a sex offender? What am I doing wrong? It's really, a lot of people care way too much about protecting their friends, and they want to hide the fact that they did awful things, and they don't want to be associated with that because I think they're afraid of people viewing them in that same way. But I think that that's wrong. I think that hiding from it is wrong. That is why I choose to say something about it. And it's, I don't know, it really just gets to me when I know that people act different towards me or towards my site and everything like that, just because I went out and I said something and I spoke out against something. Like, oh, I'm so sorry for inconveniencing you. I'm so sorry for making your press become negative because you chose to have an inappropriate, sexually harassing jabroni in your band for the past 10 years. I'm so sorry that you decided to have that. But you know what? That was your choice. You chose to associate with him. And, you could claim that you don't know what's going on. But guess what? Avoiding me these opportunities, it's not doing anything. Or even, fans coming out on Twitter and saying things. You know what? I'm not going to keep my mouth shut. I'm sorry. If you think that I'm biased and you're too naive to see that every single news outlet out there is biased in a sense, then that's on you. And you're wrong and misinformed. You think the bands would get as much coverage as they do in certain publications if they didn't pay money for advertising? Most everything is biased, whether it's blatant or not. We're obnoxious about it. We're loud. We make jokes and everything, so we stand out. But I don't think we're any more biased than any other music website out there, or music publication, or not even music publication, but any news source that receives money from advertisers and skews things in a way that either posts about them more, highlights them more, promotes them more, or just focuses on what their buddies are doing and things like that. So, a lot of people don't realize too that bias also comes with positivity. So if somebody's overly positive about a band just because of their association with them, guess what? That's also bias. So yeah, we're biased against sex predators. We're biased against batterers. We're biased against people who don't deserve the spotlight that they have. Sorry, we are. And if you don't like that, then don't follow us. And or don't work with us because, that seems to be happening a lot lately. And that's okay. I don't have the best relationships with people within the music industry. So if we don't get our opportunities, then that's that. That's just the way it's going to be. Like, I don't need a guest on my podcast this week. I could talk myself, So, I don't know. I've been talking for a long time. I did want to hit on something another person on Twitter brought up, the fact that they spoke with Kevin Lyman and they suggested that Warped Tour ought to have like standards and specific rules set in place for people who do act out inappropriately, and suggested that people going on the tour take a sexual harassment course, which I completely agree with. And I think that's a great idea. I think that Warped is very oversaturated with a lot of like different companies within it, which may take away from its overall experience and things like that. But that's just my own opinion. But I think that they have a lot going on, which is great. But I think that they ought to have more focus on behavior of their artists and things like that. I realize that it may be hard for a guy like Kevin Lyman to handle all of that himself because of how much he is in charge of and responsible for. But I definitely think that is something that should take more prominence on the tour. So yeah, that's a really, really good suggestion to make them go through like sexual harassment courses, or just like how about cultural diversity, things like that. That's really smart because there are a lot of great organizations on Warped, and the fact that there isn't anything done about that is it's odd. There's a lot of time spent on a bus. Why can't you pop in a DVD about how to, why it's wrong to treat a woman the way that you treat them? Why it wouldn't be hard. I think that's definitely something that could happen. And Kevin said that he'd be looking into it. So if that happens, that's great. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. I was actually talking to Willie, who's the site co-founder, about Warped, and the reason I hinted on it being oversaturated is I think that there's so much going on. It's so overwhelming to be at Warped Tour. I think it would be so cool if it was maybe a couple less bands, less stages, and just made you focus more on the music. I realize from a business standpoint that's probably not a good idea because the company draws revenue based on the fact that they have so much more going on than just music. But I think that as like a spectator at Warped Tour, it would be cool if you were more kind of I don't know, you had more incentive to check out the bands that are on the tour, and it wasn't just like so many different things going on at one time. But it is cool to have the options. I just think that in terms of building artists and developing artists and, coming out the next big thing, artists would have more of a chance to grow if you didn't have, if you didn't spend 2 hours at Warped Tour just trying to get around to every single clothing line's merch table, or just trying to walk from stage to stage because there's so many of them. But that's just my opinion. I'd love to know what you guys think about the state of Warped Tour and everything that's going on. I guess this has been a very Warped-centric episode. I think that I'm going to end on this note. My friend Autumn Lavis is being taken to court by her ex-boyfriend from Porch Step, and Autumn was on the podcast 2 episodes ago, and she shared her story about being in a relationship with Front Porch Step, and it was very enlightening, and has gone through a lot and is going through a lot, and she lives in Arizona right now, summoned to court in Tennessee. So she's gonna need some help getting there, gonna need help paying for a lawyer, because Front Porch Step is turning himself into the victim in all of this that's been going on. And so if you want to go out and donate to her, there is a link to her GoFundMe on our website, pupfresh.com, or you just search GoFundMe, Autumn Lavis, or From Porch Step, or whatever. I'm sure that you'll be able to find it. But we can't let this guy from Porch Step win anything. We can't. And I'm not just saying that because I hate him or whatever. It's because what he did is wrong, and the fact that he's trying to turn it around and say that his ex-girlfriend, for bringing more details about the story, is damaging his reputation and making it hard for him to be a musician, and has the potential to pull the slander or the defamation card. That's wrong, and what he did was messed up, and it was with multiple people and multiple underage people, I might add, allegedly. And so we definitely can't let him get anything against her or any of the other victims that were involved in that case. So go to GoFundMe and please donate whatever you can. Any extra money that she makes, aside from raising her for her goal of flying out to Tennessee and hiring a lawyer, she's going to give to the victims so that they can also pay for any kind of legal assistance. So that's going to be, I think, where I end it. If you like this episode and you heard me talking and you like listening to me talk, which you've been doing for like way too long, go back and check out all of our other podcast episodes. Yeah, this was odd. I think that I need a co-host because talking by myself for this long is kind of, I don't know, probably hard on your ears, but more so hard on me because I don't know what I'm saying half the time. And I'm sure a lot of that was just word vomit. And yeah, I apologize if it wasn't that good. But thank you again for listening. YouTube.com/PupFresh is where you can check out all of our podcasts, or you could subscribe to us on iTunes. We are on there, and we're also on SoundCloud. But more importantly, follow us on Twitter @PupFresh. Tweet me, let me know what you think. Comment on this video, like it, share it, whatever. I don't give a shit. Thank you so much for listening. You all have a wonderful...
It's the Pup Fresh Podcast, Pup Fresh Podcast, Pup Fresh Podcast.